In 1961, the Soviet Union dropped the biggest nuclear bomb ever built. It was so powerful that windows shattered 500 miles away, and its mushroom cloud touched the edge of space. They called it Tsar Bomba. Today, we're going to break down what it was, why they built it, how the crew survived, and how one single blast scared the world into changing the rules. Hey, if you like clear, no-nonsense Cold War stories, please subscribe and hit that like button. It helps a ton, and I'm saving up for my first car, so every click seriously helps. So why build a 50-megaton bomb in the first place? Picture this. It's the height of the Cold War. The US and the USSR are locked in a relentless contest to prove who has the bigger, smarter, and scarier technology. In 1961, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev wanted a dramatic show of power. Not just another test. He wanted a spectacle. Soviet scientists initially proposed a bomb with a theoretical yield of 100 megatons, a truly unthinkable amount of energy. But even the designers warned that at that size, the fallout and shockwaves could be catastrophic on a global scale. So they compromised, build the device for 100, but configure it to detonate at 50. It would still dwarf any other bomb ever tested. Let's be clear, Tsar Bomba wasn't a battlefield weapon. It was a signal, a terrifyingly loud one, to Washington, to NATO, and to the entire world. How did this monster of a bomb even work? It used a three-stage thermonuclear design. First, a small fission trigger, like a standard atomic bomb, starts the reaction. That initial blast ignites a much larger fusion stage. Then, a third, even larger fusion stage multiplies the energy again, creating the colossal explosion. But here's the clever part. To reduce the radioactive fallout, the designers replaced some uranium components, which would normally boost the yield and create dirty fallout with lead tampers. This is why it produced an enormous, yet surprisingly clean blast for its size. It was still terrifying, but far less radioactive than it could have been. The key idea was to make it as huge and as visible as possible, without poisoning the entire planet. Now for the delivery problem. How do you drop a sun from the sky and get away with it? The Soviets chose a Tu-95 Bear bomber for the job, a massive plane with 4 huge turboprop engines, perfect for a long-range flight to the test site over Novaya Zemlya in the high Arctic. To survive the blinding thermal flash, the entire bomber was painted with a special reflective white paint. Even more crucial, they attached a giant parachute to the bomb itself. This wasn't a small chute. It weighed about 800 kilograms. Its job was to slow the bomb's descent, giving the flight crew precious minutes to escape the blast radius. The numbers are staggering. The bomb itself weighed around 27 tons and was over 26 feet long. The plan was simple. Fly to an altitude of about 10 kilometers, release the bomb, let the parachute deploy, and then bank away at full throttle. The day of the test was October 30th, 1961. The weather over the Arctic test range was clear, perfect for observers to see everything from far, far away. The Tu-95 bomber approached its target. The crew armed the device and released their payload. The massive orange and white parachute blossomed open a perfect deployment. The pilot slammed the throttles to full power and banked the plane hard, racing away from ground zero. The bomb detonated at an altitude of about 4,000 meters, or 13,000 feet. The yield was approximately 50 megatons. The flash was so intensely bright that observers hundreds of miles away described the entire sky turning white. The fireball was enormous, miles wide, but by design, it didn't touch the ground. The mushroom cloud was the true spectacle. It rose to an altitude of over 60 kilometers, nearly touching the edge of space, with a stem wider than many cities. The crew survived. Minutes after the detonation, the shockwaves slammed into their bomber, causing it to drop violently, but the reinforced aircraft held together. They had made it. So what did a 50-megaton blast actually do? The shockwave was so powerful that it circled the entire Earth multiple times. Windows shattered in towns and villages hundreds of miles away, with some reports claiming damage as far as 500 miles. Seismic instruments all over the world registered the blast as if it were a massive earthquake. The thermal flash was so intense that it could have caused severe burns tens of kilometers away if detonated over a populated area. Because the device was designed to be cleaner, the radioactive fallout was far less than a typical 50-megaton bomb would produce. But the message was unmistakable. If the Soviet Union wanted to build city-destroying bombs, it could. With all that power, why wasn't Tsar Bomba ever considered for use in an actual war? Well, it looked impressive on paper, but as a practical weapon, it had major problems. It was simply too heavy and too huge for most delivery systems. The slow parachute drop and high-altitude detonation made sense for a test, but they were not practical for a real combat scenario. Furthermore, strategic doctrine was already shifting. The future wasn't in single giant bombs, but in multiple, smaller, and more accurate warheads delivered by missiles known as MIRVs, as well as stealthy submarine-launched weapons. So Tsar Bomba was ultimately a piece of political theater, backed by terrifying physics. It was a shot across the bow that screamed, "Don't test us." The global reaction was exactly what you'd expect: absolute fear. Scientists in both the West and the East analyzed the data from the shockwaves and the flash. Even inside the Soviet Union, leaders understood that if this kind of weapon became the new normal, the atmosphere itself would become a permanent battlefield. The fear generated by this single test created momentum. Soon after, the world superpowers moved toward the Partial Test Ban Treaty of 1963, which banned all nuclear tests in the atmosphere, underwater, and in space. Tsar Bomba didn't end the arms race, but it scared both sides into finally setting some ground rules. Let's clear up a few myths. First, was it a 100 megaton detonation? No, it was built with the potential for 100, but it was configured for about 50 megatons to reduce risk and fallout. Another myth: the bomber almost disintegrated. The reality is that while the shockwave hit hard, the Tu-95 was heavily modified and survived as planned. And finally, did it scorch the entire Arctic? Nope. The fireball never touched the ground, so while local damage was severe, it wasn't a surface burst. To put 50 megatons in perspective, let's anchor it. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima was about 15 kilotons. Tsar Bomba was 50,000 kilotons. That's over 3,000 times more powerful. If detonated over a major city, the blast, thermal radiation, and shockwave would create destruction beyond anything humanity has ever witnessed in warfare. But it's also strategically inefficient. Multiple smaller warheads are harder to intercept and offer more flexible targeting options. So Tsar Bomba became the ultimate "look what we can do" device, not the blueprint for the future of nuclear weapons. It's easy to get lost in the numbers, but we have to remember the human side of this story. Real people flew that mission. The pilots trusted their engineers, and the engineers trusted their math. The white paint, the giant parachute, the escape route, all of it was calculated so those crew members could come home. On the ground and at sea, observers recorded the data that would shape global policy for decades. When people in both superpowers finally saw what a 50 megaton blast truly looked like, many of them, on all sides, came to the same conclusion: this is too far. So, what changed after Tsar Bomba? Nuclear testing moved underground to contain the fallout. Military strategy shifted away from giant bombs and toward precision, advanced delivery systems, and survivability missiles in hardened silos, submarines hiding in the deep ocean, and mobile launchers on land. And public awareness grew. Images of that colossal cloud and the reports of worldwide shockwaves became powerful symbols of a line we should never cross. The legacy of Tsar Bomba isn't just about being the biggest ever. It's about the moment governments realized that fear itself can impose boundaries. Just to recap the timeline quickly, before 1961, the superpowers were in a frantic race of tests and technology. On October 30th, 1961, Tsar Bomba detonated over Novaya Zemlya with a yield of 50 megatons. By 1963, the Partial Test Ban Treaty was signed, ending these atmospheric megaton spectacles. After that, the arms race continued, but with more rules and a healthy dose of caution. What if it had been 100 megatons? The designers could have easily configured it with different materials to reach that yield. That would have meant catastrophic fallout, far greater shockwave damage, and an even bigger global backlash. It might have even threatened the survival of the bomber crew itself. In the end, the Soviets decided the message didn't need to be any louder. This story still matters today. We live in an age of incredibly powerful technology. Tsar Bomba serves as a stark reminder that when power becomes almost unlimited, it is restraint, not strength, that keeps our world intact. A single device managed to change policy, change minds, and alter the course of the Cold War, all without destroying a single city. If this breakdown made the biggest bomb in history easy to understand, please drop a like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit my next milestone and put it toward my first car. And let me know in the comments what you want to see next. The Able Archer 83 War Scare? Stanislav Petrov's false alarm night? Or Project Azorian, the CIA's mission to raise a Soviet sub from the bottom of the Pacific? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.